Welcome to Nucleus, the podcast covering America's top leaders in business and culture. I'm your host, Tripwire. Today on the show, the mysterious genius who revolutionized money itself by unleashing a digital currency that would challenge the entire global financial system. Here we are in May 2026, and Bitcoin just crossed a market cap that makes most Fortune 500 companies look like lemonade stands. Institutional adoption's gone from maybe to obviously. Nation-states are stacking sats in their reserves, and the whole thing runs without a CEO, without a board of directors, without anyone actually in charge. Which brings us to the most bizarre leadership story in modern business history. Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous creator who solved a problem computer scientists struggled with for decades, launched a trillion-dollar asset class, and then just disappeared. Like fully ghosted. Last email sent in April 2011, and radio silence ever since. They're sitting on roughly 1 million bitcoins, worth hundreds of billions of dollars, that have never moved. Not one Satoshi. It's like Bezos founding Amazon, watching it become the everything store, and then vanishing into the wilderness without ever cashing a single stock option. Except weirder, because we don't even know if Satoshi's a he, she, they, or a group of cryptographers who really committed to the bit. So why does this matter right now? Because in 2026, we're watching the ultimate experiment in leaderless organizations actually work at global scale. Every leadership book tells you organizations need vision, guidance, decisive action from the top. Satoshi said, nah, and built something that got stronger when they left. That's not just unconventional, that's borderline offensive to everything we think we know about how businesses scale. And yet, here we are, 17 years after the Genesis block, and Bitcoin's still ticking along like the world's most reliable, decentralized clock. Let's rewind to late 2008. The global financial system's imploding, Lehman Brothers just collapsed, governments are bailing out banks with taxpayer money, and trust in centralized institutions is somewhere between low and you've got to be kidding me. Into this chaos, someone using the name Satoshi Nakamoto drops a 9-page white paper on a cryptography mailing list. 9 pages. Not a 100-page academic tome, not a business plan thick enough to stop a bullet. 9 pages. Titled, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The reception? Mostly skepticism. Makes sense. Digital currency had been tried before. DigiCash failed. E-gold failed. Every attempt crashed into the same problem, the double spending issue. How do you prevent someone from copying digital money and spending it twice without some trusted authority keeping the books? Satoshi's answer was elegant enough to make cryptographers weep. Take proof of work from Hashcash, add Merkle trees, throw in some public key cryptography, and create a distributed ledger where everyone can verify everything, but no one controls anything. Miners compete to solve math puzzles. Winners get to add the next block of transactions, and the whole network agrees on what's real through pure computational consensus. No central bank needed, no trusted intermediary required. Just math, incentives, and a network of computers that don't trust each other, but somehow maintain a shared truth. On January 3, 2009, Satoshi mined the Genesis block. Embedded in it, the Times 3 January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. Part timestamp, part political statement, entirely perfect timing. Bitcoin launched in the smoking crater of the 2008 financial crisis, with a message that basically said, this is why we need an alternative. For the first week, Satoshi mined alone. Then, Hal Finney, a cryptographer, joined in. On January 12th, Satoshi sent Finney 10 bitcoins in the first ever Bitcoin transaction, worth essentially nothing then, worth millions now. Here's where it gets interesting from a leadership perspective. Satoshi didn't just build and disappear. They stuck around for 2 years, actively developing the software, responding to forum posts, fixing bugs. In August 2010, someone discovered a massive vulnerability that let you create 184 billion bitcoins out of thin air. Satoshi and the early developers fixed it in 5 hours, rolled back the blockchain, and kept moving. Crisis management without ego, without blame. Just, here's the problem, here's the solution, done. But Satoshi was already planning their exit. Responsibilities gradually shifted to other developers, especially Gavin Andresen. The alert key that could broadcast warnings to all nodes, hands it off to Gavin. Control of the bitcoin.org domain transitioned away. Then, in December 2010, WikiLeaks started accepting Bitcoin donations after Visa and MasterCard cut them off. Satoshi wrote on the forum, "WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest, and the swarm is headed towards us." You can almost feel the concern. Bitcoin was still fragile, still experimental, and now it's getting attention from governments who really don't appreciate financial systems they can't control. A few months later, April 2011, Satoshi sent a final email to Gavin. "I've moved on to other things. It's in good hands with Gavin and everyone." And that was it. Gone. The most successful disappearing act in business history. Now, conventional wisdom says this should have ended Bitcoin. Founders are supposed to be indispensable. Steve Jobs leaves Apple, the stock tanks. Musk takes a vacation, Tesla investors panic. But Bitcoin? It kept growing. In fact, you could argue Satoshi leaving made it stronger. Because here's the thing. You can't arrest a protocol. You can't subpoena an anonymous creator. You can't pressure someone who isn't there to change the code or comply with regulations. Satoshi's absence became Bitcoin's greatest feature. It proved the system was truly decentralized, not dependent on any single genius or leader. The community had to figure out governance through consensus, through forking when disagreements got too intense, through letting the market decide which version survives. So what can we actually learn from someone who led by leaving? 3 big lessons here, and they're weirder than you'd expect. First lesson, design incentives, don't manage behavior. Satoshi didn't create a company with employees and managers and quarterly reviews. They designed an economic game where everyone's self-interest aligns with network security. Miners want to earn Bitcoin, so they compete to secure the network. Attacking the network costs more than you'd gain, so rational actors don't do it. Everyone can verify transactions, so trust becomes unnecessary. This is what economists call mechanism design, and it's way more powerful than rules or oversight. Think about your own organization. Are you spending energy managing people's behavior, or have you designed systems where the profitable action is also the right action? Sales commissions are the obvious example, but it goes deeper. If your team's incentives reward short-term wins over long-term health, guess what you'll get? Satoshi understood that code and incentives could replace management entirely. That's not practical for most businesses, but the principle scales. Design the game right, and you won't need referees. Second lesson, solve the core problem. Ignore everything else. Previous digital currencies failed because they added features without solving double spending. They built beautiful houses on broken foundations. Satoshi went the opposite direction. Forget features, forget user experience, forget making it easy for grandma to use. Just solve the one problem that makes everything else impossible. Creating digital scarcity without trusted intermediaries. Early Bitcoin was clunky, confusing, barely functional for normal people. Didn't matter. The foundation was solid. Everything else could be built later, by other people, in layers on top. This connects directly to what Clayton Christensen called jobs to be done theory. Bitcoin's job wasn't to be convenient or pretty. Its job was to be unstoppable and trustless. It did that job perfectly, even while struggling at everything else. In your business, what's the one problem that, if unsolved, makes everything else irrelevant? That's where your focus belongs. Not on the nice-to-haves, not on the features competitors have, on the core problem that unlocks everything else. Third lesson, strategic absence can be leadership. This is the wildest one, and it completely contradicts every leadership book on your shelf. Satoshi built a system that didn't need them, then proved it by leaving. Most founders can't imagine this. Their ego's too wrapped up in being essential. But Satoshi understood something profound. For a truly decentralized system, a leader is a liability, a single point of failure, a target for governments, a bottleneck for decisions. By disappearing, Satoshi forced the community to develop distributed governance. They eliminated the "just ask the founder" escape hatch. Now, you're probably not building a cryptocurrency, and your company legally needs someone in charge. But the principle applies. Are you building systems that work without you, or are you making yourself indispensable? The latter feels good for your ego, but terrible for your organization. Real leadership means creating structures, incentives, and cultures that function when you're not in the room. Succession planning isn't just about having a backup CEO. It's about building an organization that could survive you disappearing tomorrow. The framework connecting all this is what Harvard Business Review calls institutional design. Satoshi didn't build a company. They built an institution, a set of rules and incentives that perpetuate themselves. The 21 million Bitcoin cap is hard-coded. The halving schedule runs automatically every 4 years. The difficulty adjustment keeps blocks coming every 10 minutes, regardless of how many miners join or leave. These aren't policies someone can change. They're mathematical certainties. That's the ultimate form of organizational resilience, encoding your core principles so deeply that no future leader can mess them up. Here's what makes this even more fascinating in 2026. Satoshi's sitting on roughly 1 million Bitcoins that have never moved. At current prices, that's a fortune that makes most billionaires look broke. And they've never touched it, not one coin. That's either the most impressive display of integrity in financial history, or Satoshi lost the private keys. Or they're no longer with us. We genuinely don't know. But the effect is the same. It proves Bitcoin wasn't a get-rich-quick scheme for the founder. The incentives were aligned with the network's success, not personal enrichment. That's powerful signaling, even if unintentional. Let's bring this home with 3 quick takeaways. First, incentive design beats management. Build systems where self-interest serves the mission, and you won't need to micromanage. Second, solve the core problem ruthlessly before adding features. A beautiful product with a broken foundation is still broken. Third, build yourself out of the job. If your organization can't function without you, you haven't built an organization. You've built a dependency. The bottom line? Satoshi Nakamoto proved that the best leadership move might be no leadership at all, as long as you've designed the system right first. In a world obsessed with founder heroes and indispensable CEOs, that's either the most radical idea in business or the oldest one, depending on how you look at it. Either way, 17 years later, the experiment's still running, and the results speak for themselves. Thank you for listening to Nucleus. You can show our podcast team some love with 5 stars and a follow. Stay hungry, stay foolish.
Grab news. Thomas.